I'm sure every one of us here knows the rallying slogan of the Indian freedom struggle, Inkilab Zindabad. I don't think there is anyone here, certainly not in Kerala, who doesn't know that slogan, Inkilab Zindabad. How many of us know that Inkilab Salute Krantikari Salam has been declared by the High Court of Delhi as incendiary and inflammatory? So, today, in this country, the country we are living in today, you can be thrown into jail for shouting Inkilab Salam, Krantikari Salam, or Inkilab Zindabad. I know you're not going to believe me, so please look at the thing there. This is the Delhi High Court's rule. During the course of argument, issues were raised relating to the content, context, and use of certain phraseology in the speech of the appellant, which prima facie appeared to be incriminating and inflammatory. Further, the court is not impressed with the argument of the appellant that a call to revolution does not have any effect, only the immediate gathering. So we don't accept this thing about bloodless revolution. Robespierre also called for revolution. Now, you might think that all this is theoretical, except that it led to the denial of bail to Umar Khalid. This is the case. Hmm. The court found that the Delhi police charge of terrorism against Umar Khalid are prima facie true, making him ineligible for bail. Right? For what? I mean, the court is holding that the rallying cry of the Indian freedom struggle, Inkilab Salam, Krantikari Salam, is inflammatory and incendiary. That is what the High Court of Delhi is doing. Okay. So, actually, by the way, another interesting thing in this governance by gagging, there are 5 forms I'm going to look at. But I wanted to tell you, this is not the only thing coming out of the courts. In Supreme Court legal documents which I'm accessing, where it used to say maybe Dilip D'Souza versus Union of India, the court documents are increasingly saying Dilip D'Souza versus Bharat. Maybe that's a good thing for defense advocates. Tomorrow they can say my client's crimes were against India. That's a defunct entity. Now we should say he has not committed any crime or slogan against Bharat. I mean, seriously, a very huge collapse of the legal order and the judicial order is in process. Yeah. So, I mean, uh, all these slogans were also repeatedly brought up during the Delhi riots cases. Now that you shouted this, the police is right in accusing you of being an agent of terror. That is the kind of thing. I want to say that of the 5 forms, I'm not saying there are only 5 ways of gagging. There are multiple ways. In the time I have, I'm not sure I'll be able to look at more than 3, but I will try covering 5. I also want to make it very clear at the beginning that the gagging by governance by gagging did not begin in 2014. It did not begin with Mr. Narendra Modi. What Mr. Modi and his group have done, they've taken what existed to the stratosphere. It's exploded under their rule. Otherwise, consider every year, June 25th, 1975, anniversary of emergency, everywhere in the country we hold meetings. Yeah. We ritualize one day in a year, we ritualize our rejection of the emergency. But every day, every year, we embrace our institutionalization of the emergency. Every day, somewhere in the country, some law is passed. And it's not just the laws. Very often, the laws look reasonable enough, but the rules framed for the laws are deadly. The rules framed around the laws are deadly. Uh, Consider, the situation is now that since 2014, that the argumentative Indian that Professor Sen spoke of is no longer quite as articulate or argumentative. In fact, Professor Sen himself has been gagged with threats of bulldozing his house. And I wish journalists would stop using this ridiculous phrase, bulldozer justice. Justice has nothing to do with the bulldozer. What you're talking about is bulldozer terror. That is what you should be calling it. Now, even Amartya Sen is not free from it. The vice chancellor of Vishwa Bharati says we will break down your wall to take back 19 decimals of land which they claim his father grabbed from them. Yeah, this is Professor Sen at 90 sitting at his home wondering when the bulldozer will come. I'll only look at 5 major forms of gagging. Somehow, another thing, since I do see fellow journalists here, I just want to express my complete disgust with this cliche we keep using. Speak the truth to power. Somehow that's a very stupid phrase for me. It implies that power is so naive that they don't know. We have to tell them. If we tell power what is wrong, they'll set it right. Huh? Is that so? Power knows much better than you and me and all of us put together what's going on. My exhortation to you, speak the truth to power, but much more important, speak the truth about power. Not just to speak the truth about power. About my hero in journalism was the child who said, the emperor is naked. It was all in the public domain, but he said it. And after that, the charade, the facade collapsed. Okay. Uh, so that is the second thing. The By the way, when we talk of power, who are we talking of when we talk of power? I'm not speaking only of governments. There are many other powers in a society. In our society, two, at least more. It's not just about governments. Who rules or reigns in India? I believe this country, for quite some time now, is ruled by a coalition, A, of socio religious fundamentalists, B, of economic market fundamentalists, and C, the bed cohabited by this happy union is what we call corporate media. That's where these two meet. Because there is a heavy overlap between the three categories. So, you've had we'll come to that when we come to the media. But there is a very heavy overlap. Many in power are both religious and market fundamentalists. Many corporate persons are both. Arun Jaitley, Narendra Modi, and Amit Shah are great examples of being market fundamentalists and religious fundamentalists. When we, um, the common element in all three is corporate power, whether in governance, in government, whether in the corporate world, whether in the media world. Yeah. Do you know what your media is worth today? The media that is listed, I'm talking about financial value. The media that is listed on the stock exchange, I'm assuming that they've only counted the media who are publicly listed. Ernst and Young comes out every year with financial value of the Indian media. In this March, it was 2.32 trillion rupees or 28 billion US dollars. In 1 month, it changed. It went up to $36 billion because of one deal, the Disney Hotstar merger with Ambani. With Reliance's deal with Disney Hotstar was worth $8.5 billion. It means one man added 25% of the value of the media in one deal, and in the preceding media, he already had about a third. Now, this one deal of Disney Hotstar, it accounts for about 50 to 60% of all online streaming in your country. All your streaming apps, everything, 60% are going to be controlled by one man who also happens to be the richest Indian and the ninth richest or 10th richest person in the world. So, so there are both religious fundamentalists, socio fundamentalists, uh, your economic fundamentalists, and corporate media. But the corporate element is what is common to all about them. When we talk about corporate again, we are talking about an ever expanding power of ever growing, ever narrowing strata. So, what are these different forms of gagging that I'm going to run into now? By the way, I'll let you see the rest of that statement of the Delhi High Court. And I want you to know who coined the slogan Inkilab Zindabad. Okay. The appellant's application seeking regular bail is rejected. After the court, in its considered view, said Inkilab Salam, Krantikari Salam are incendiary and inflammatory. Now, who actually coined this slogan during the freedom struggle? It was a Muslim, Hasrat Mohani, who was then a member of the Communist Party. Hasrat Mohani, now here's a very funny thing. Hasrat Mohani was also a great admirer of, in mythological history, Mohani was a great admirer of Sri Krishna. So, Mohani finds a place in the government of India's Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav website because he became an admirer of Sri Krishna. But here's the question: shouldn't the people who have put up Mohani's slogan on the website be arrested for being inflammatory and incendiary? Should they not be arrested for that? Yeah. It's a conundrum. Yeah, anyway. Uh, so the first of the ways of, I'm running through the five, then I'll come to each one of them. The first is gagging by laws, using the law to suppress freedom, particularly freedom of expression, as a major form of censorship. I've just given you the example. Yeah. When you say that Inqilab Zindabad is an anti-national slogan, as the prosecution did. Okay. The gagging by laws. Second is gagging by outlaws, by bylaws, and sometimes on the demand of in-laws. The gagging that happens by extra legal means or plainly illegal means. Look at what happened in Manipur. Hmm? Till now, have we had proper coverage of Manipur in any branch of the media? Do we know how many hundred churches have been burned down across the state? Yeah, from tiny ones which are meant for a community of 20 families to large ones of which I believe 37 are completely destroyed. You're not having anything because the government does not want it covered. You cannot effectively cover Manipur. That's a fact. The media have not distinguished themselves in their coverage of Manipur. Also, also extra legal gagging is what happens with mob lynchings, with bulldozer terror. Yeah. In fact, many municipal laws and rules of regulations have been rewritten to make bulldozing legal in the eyes of those of the perpetrator. Okay. So you have gagging by laws and gagging by outside. The sheer violence of the Bajrang Dal, the VHP, and many other violent organizations. But again, all this is possible because we in the media do no justice to covering what's happening, to saying these are the people doing it, these are the people who are doing this kind of horrible stuff. We don't. Third is corporate media and big money, which go together. I've just given you an example. Now, it's uh, corporate media. How many of you even know that in 20 months of COVID 19, big media houses laid off 3,500 journalists? 3,500 journalists were retrenched by big media. That figure is in the affidavit in the Supreme Court filed by the Delhi Union of Journalists. It has not been challenged by the media owners. I was on the subcommittee set up by the press council to look at these retrenchments, closures, forced early retirements, etc., all this sort of stuff. When we sent questionnaires as the Press Council of India, we got answers with such arrogance. Bennett Coleman and Co., in my days when I used to cover them in Bombay, known affectionately as Bandit Conman and Co., uh, Bennett Coleman and Co. sent us a reply. It's none of your business. Press Council is to look at matters of freedom of press. It has nothing to do with hiring and retrenchment. You go to a tribunal. Okay? This is the arrogance with which they replied to the Press Council's request for information on the number of retrenchments. And they've done all sorts of fantastic things. In the last 10 years, many newspapers have set up some phenomenally funny ways of hiring a correspondent. Suppose Madhavan sir is a freelance journalist in Uttarakhand, Almora. I will send him a contract which will say, I'm not joking, sir. NS, I'm not joking. The contract says, Hindustan Times has done this frequently. Many have done it. The contract says, I, NS Madhavan, am not a journalist by vocation or profession. I'm doing this as a hobby. They are now known as hobby correspondents. Tomorrow, when I sack you, there is nothing you can do. You have given me in writing in the contract that you are not a journalist, that you are not, it is not neither your vocation nor your profession, it's a hobby. I love this term, hobby correspondent. Yeah, I wish I'd ever had that designation when the media were actually a media. So when we talk about the third. So this is the third one, corporate and big money. The kind of money building a censorship universe that will never be seen from people outside the media and will rarely be spoken of by people within the media because their own jobs are at risk. Yeah, but we know this. Between April 2020 and 2022 January, 3,500 correspondents at least lost their jobs, and 15,000 non-journalist media workers. Okay. Now, please understand how much of a violation of law this was, because the one thing that the Modi government did, which I saluted and salamed, on March 24th, when he gave his speech on the shutdown, he declared, the follow-up declared media as an essential service. That is the first time media were declared. I was very happy. What does essential service means? It means you cannot be uprooted and throw. Can you throw out 3,000 people from the fire brigade? Can you throw out 3,000 people from the hospitals? You can't. Right? Those are essential services. Despite its being declared an essential service, 3,500 journalists and 15,000 non-journalists are thrown out of their jobs, and the government does nothing, and the courts, well, you know how it is. It will go on there forever. The court will admonish the publications and say, solve the problem, and nothing will. This has happened with every wage board, right? So that's going to happen again. Number four, gagging number four, big money and inequality. I'm going to spend some time on this. For me, this is the large canvas. The multiple inequalities we have built in our, um, by the way, that is, Hasrat Mohani has even been deified on a postage stamp. Yeah. A man who coined inflammatory, incendiary, and anti national slogans. He's on the postage stamp of India. He's in the philately system of India. But there you are. Hmm. Uh, uh, Now, for me, all these five gaggings are made possible by the multiple inequalities of our society: caste, class, gender, the multiple inequalities. In the time I have, I'm going to look at wealth inequalities. Here we are, and you'll see for yourself what kind of wealth on this is July 15th date. The cumulative wealth of India's $200 billionaires. India did not have even $1 billionaire in 1991. On July 15, 2024, we had 200. And as of today, we have 211. We are minting them at the rate of one every 7 days, 9 days. Okay. 974 billion USD. That, by the way, that has gone up to 1,025 billion. That means they're closing in on $1 trillion cumulative worth. Now, do you know what that 1,000 billion is? It's 7.5 times. It's, 1.7 times your total budget expenditure. 200 individuals, 200 individuals control 25% of your gross domestic product. Reminding you of that other meaning of the word gross, right? So you have 200 individuals controlling $1,000 billion of wealth, which is 1.7 times your total budget expenditure, which was 45 lakh crore in March 2024. So then, by the way, that control of the corporate media, it didn't only show in chucking out of journalists, it showed in the silence and support for the government on the farmers' struggle. Did you read one editorial saying that the farmers were right and they won their fight? You, you kept writing. Express took this peculiar angle saying the main fault is that you haven't spoken to the farmers. Meeti meeti baat karo, persuade them. And in the last paragraph of the Express edit would say, however, the laws are very good. Whose laws are they? They were crafted not in parliament, but in the boardrooms of corporations. That's who they, yeah. Anyway, so you suppress that also in the farm struggle on inheritance tax, the kind of attack that came on inheritance tax, which every Western country is practicing. Okay. And we even abolished wealth tax in 2016, 17. The fourth is big money, coming back to inequality. Look at the levels of the inequality involved. The cumulative, India's, it is 62 times. These $200 billionaires own 62 times India's agricultural budget, or 1.25 lakh crores, or agricultural budget is $15.62 billion. Our 200 billionaire friends, their wealth is 62 times your agriculture budget. Now, I decided to look at the promise of capitalism. What does capitalism tell us? It tells us that if you work hard, you can also be an Ambani. If you work hard, you can also be an Adani. Now, I have problems with this, even theoretically, because if hard work makes you a billionaire, every woman in rural India should be a billionaire. Does anyone work harder than them? Every woman in rural India, rural Africa, and Latin America should be a billionaire for the amount of work they do. Okay. The ILO's data shows us that women do, yeah, they do 12, 10 trillion dollars worth of unpaid labor each year, which is more than the combined value of X, Meta, Facebook, the whole gang. Okay, then their combined market value. So about 2 times their combined market value. Now look at I checked. Can someone working on the common man, usually a common woman, working on the MNREGA, Manrega, 289 rupees national average. If you are someone working on Manrega, can you accumulate as much wealth as um, Mukesh Ambani? I'm pleased to tell you that you can. Okay. I'm very pleased to tell you that you can. It'll take a little time, 340.6 million years to accumulate the $118 billion that Mukesh Ambani has. It'll take you. Now, on the other hand, if your rural family is modest and say we don't want his total wealth, we'll settle for 1 year's salary, then to it comes down to a mere 5,190 years. They can earn in 5,200 years what he earns annually. So there's your promise and triumph of capitalist economics. Hmm. Uh, See, all these inequalities lead to the fifth inequality. Okay, here you can also look at this kind of disparity. The wealth of our $200 billion is 100 times, more than 100 times, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme in its highest year. The highest ever year during COVID, it is 100 times greater than that. Now, do you know what 200 billionaires is in your population? Or even 215? It is 0.0000014% of your population. And that 0.00014% of your population own wealth equivalent to 1/4 to 1/3 of your GDP. At least 1/4 of the GDP they are accounting for. That's why I long ago stopped believing that any sense can be made of what the economists say. Of I actually found an Instagram post of a lady, I believe she is seriously unwell, which explained the economics and mindset and the social mindset of inequality much better than any Nobel Prize winning economist. The latest three guys have been given prizes for their work entirely Eurocentric, which talks about institutions being responsible for poverty, not colonialism itself. Who brought the bloody institutions? Anyway, this is my favorite quote on inequality. Have a look. If a monkey started hoarding more bananas than it could eat, while most of the other monkeys starved, scientists would study that monkey to figure out what the heck was wrong with it. When a human being does it, we put them on the cover of Forbes magazine. Yeah. So there you are in the logic and mindset, what I call the Nero's guest mindset of inequality. But all these forms of inequality lead to number 5. The fifth form lead to gagging number 5, which is, look, you've got self-interest, you've got fear and intimidation. One more journalist has been thrown in jail because he had papers on the Gujarat Maritime Board's documents. Mahesh Langa is now languishing in jail in Gujarat for daring to collect information on the one most important man in this country outside government. Okay, so when all these things weigh in on you, the fifth gagging is self censorship. This is apart from censorship of the newsroom. When the paid, by the way, for my sins, I was the guy who broke the paid news scandal in 2009. You'll remember that. One of the finest senior journalists of Maharashtra rang me up. No names. And my faith in his integrity is beyond bounds. I mean, cannot be measured. He told me, Sainath, you're working in a wage board paper called The Hindu. You can be a hero. Those of us working on 11-month contracts, we can't be heroes. Hmm. He said, 40 days before renewal of my contract, I'm called to meet the editor, and sitting with him is the brand manager and the financial chief. Yeah. And I'm told we have to puff this politician. Am I going to say no? I've got one EMI on my child's education abroad. I've got another EMI on my vehicle loan. I've got a third EMI on my housing loan. Do you want me to be brave, Sainath? I had no answer. I had no answer. Self censorship is the product of many functions. There is the function of terror, which has ruled Manipur for 2 years, for more than a year now. Okay. There is the function of what's happened to. Look, this is a country where the media are unable, the national media. I love this definition of national media. In print media, it means any newspaper that has one edition in Delhi. Even if that is the only edition, like Pioneer, these are all national media. The rest of us are anti national. But the national English media, you know, well, the, the whole lot of them, um, look, where was the protest when, where was the outrage? Did you hold media seminars when 11 rapists of Bilkis Bano were set free by the government of Gujarat? They could only have been set free on the orders of Amit Shah or Modi. There is no other way they could be free. Did you find one newspaper saying that? That there is no one else who could have set them free. And after going back, four of them have got parole. After the Supreme Court has ordered their being thrown back in jail, they've got parole for on various grounds. Now we look all this combination, but the gagging by laws, which is growing by the day, I want you to remember this. The biggest phenomenon always present in the countryside, long before Narendra Modi, long before Amit Shah, was criminalization of dissent. Criminalization of dissent. Dalits and Adivasis are very familiar with criminalization of dissent, as you found when you did your book on Pardis. Yeah. Any crime committed in the vicinity, the police will round up the first 10 Pardis, beat them up. But criminalization of dissent goes further. Yeah. It's what happened with, say, JNU. It's what happened with Jamia Millia. But what is the difference since 2014? It's reached the middle classes and upper middle classes also. Hmm. Otherwise, you look at how the laws are applied. I have done a study on Supreme Court and rural India, and one chapter I'm sure you'll all be pleased to know. One section of my paper is how Arnab Goswami was treated in an abetment to suicide case, how he got bail immediately, how the court held a special hearing at a late advanced hour. And I have compared that with how Siddiq Kapur spent 3 years in hell and continues to experience hell outside. Siddiq Kapur from your state. Yeah. No bail forever. He develops COVID in the prison. He's taken to a hospital because all of us are shouting. Journalists are shouting, not the media. He is taken to a hospital, chained to the hospital bed, and asked to urinate in a bottle. Yeah, he's asked to urinate in a bottle to save him to save the guard needless trips to the bathroom and back. Now, one person gets his bail and is in no danger of being arrested, in a matter of few days, in say 40, 50 working hours of the court, another spends 2 years before he gets parole to go to his mother's funeral. No, he can't go to his mother's funeral. He goes to his mother's deathbed. Kappan saw his mother on her deathbed. Later, they did not let him go a second time for her funeral. See the entire, it's not just the laws, but the application of it and the rules framed around the laws. So you understand that. In POSCO, Jagat Singhpur, Abhay Sinha, leader of the agitation, my conversation with him on the phone, I ring up and say, Abhay, how many? And he will say, now 58 cases. I haven't spoken to him for a year, so it's probably 70. In Kudankulam, please look at this. This is unprecedented anywhere in the world. In the Kudankulam agitation, which is before Modi, before Shah, do you know that this is the only instance in the world where 13,000 human beings from one area of Thoothukudi district, 13,000 Indian citizens were charged with waging war against the state. Waging war against the state. 9,000 were charged with sedition. Do you know something interesting? If you look at how long the British were in Madras presidency, they were there 90 years after the law of sedition came. In their 90 years, they did not have a fraction of that number of people for waging war or sedition that Madam Jayalalitha Amma managed in 1 year, 2 years in Kudankulam. In Srikakulam port, I remember people being arrested for waging war against the state and attempt to murder a police party. Leading them were two women, one 78 years old, one 82 years old. Their photos are on the front pages of Andhra newspapers in 2011. In Odisha, Koraput, I go to see the people who have been arrested on an agitation. What started in Kudankulam was, you will say, Dilip D'Souza, in the FIR, you will say Dilip D'Souza and 3,500 others. You don't name them, you don't specify the villages. It means for the next 3 years, the police can terrorize all the villages in that region. SP Uday Kumar must be the only individual, Guinness Book, with more than 300 FIRs filed against him in one episode of the Kudankulam case. Totally, and every 7 or 8 FIRs read SP Uday Kumar and 3,000 others. So in Koraput, one of the charges brought against an assistant professor of chemistry in the jail where I went, theft of a buffalo. When I asked the IG of police in Odisha, he said, sir, we have to use a judicious mix of charges because the courts let them go otherwise. So we keep all sorts of other charges on which we can. Now they don't have to do that. The courts will, in the first charge, indict them and throw them into it. See what's happening to governance, to freedom, to liberty, to expression in your country. The labor laws which were brought in during the COVID period, 39 ordinances brought in suppressing labor, and India, have we even had a discussion that India broke the 100-year gold standard of labor law, 8-hour day? We made it 12 hours day. Where is your protest? Where is our outrage? Where are we taking to the streets to say you cannot? Ari, the capitalists of the United States, Rockefeller and Ford especially, adopted the 8-hour day on good capitalist reasoning. They did studies and found that after 8 hours of labor, productivity falls off. So they accepted 8-hour labor, but not the Gujarat Chamber of Commerce, which got this done. Okay? So whichever, whether you're looking at gagging by laws, gagging by outlaws, whichever of these things that you are looking at, um, the oh, media, please, I have to finish with that. I already told you that one individual accounts for 40%, between 30 and 35% of the total value of listed media in this country. Hmm. Now, many of you know Maharashtra is the apex state in the farm crisis. Maharashtra accounts for one-fifth of all the farm suicides in the country. Several of the, I'm the guy who covered that for 20 years now. Several of the farm suicides in Maharashtra, one of the factors, there are many factors in every suicide. Hmm. One of the factors in several of the suicides is the father being unable to get his daughter married. Okay? The government of Maharashtra in 1 year found that 3 lakh families in 6 districts, Maharashtra has 36 districts. In 6 districts, 3 lakh families were unable to afford to get their daughters married. In the same Maharashtra, 1 hour's flight from Nagpur, you had a wedding which cost approximately $500 million. Now, please understand something. I'm not looking at this as all of us rightly look at it as obscene, vulgar, indecent, immoral. But please understand this. This was a very serious business investment. It's a very serious business investment. Now, I am Ambani. Oh, I wish, but supposing I was Ambani, I have my CEO of one company, CEO of 30 companies, negotiating with Ministry of Forestry, Ministry of Minerals, ONGC. I have my CEOs negotiating there every day for new deals, for new leases, for new concessions. Correct? Now, you guys are the secretaries of the different ministries. On one day, you see the entire union cabinet, every VIP in India from the Prime Minister down, including your cabinet secretary, are attending Mr. Ambani's son's wedding. Tomorrow, when my CEOs and dalals come back to the ministry, are you going to refuse to sign the deal I want? Are you? Are you going to say, no, I don't think I'll sign this deal. It doesn't look good for the public. The hell with you. Are you? You've seen half the bloody cabinet, half the union secretaries of government attended the wedding. Every celebrity in the country attended the wedding. Two opposition forces declined to attend the wedding. That is the only thing that you know. The India Alliance and one more. So that I'm saying it was a considered move. It was a very considered move. And remember, when you're talking about media, the media angle of gagging, that remember this, they come together, government and media. Jammu and Kashmir, they have had 805 internet shutdowns. 805 internet shutdowns since 2012. No part of the world records equals that record. In India, 805 internet shutdowns, most of them overwhelmingly in Jammu and Kashmir. So, and then what about the great majors, Google, Facebook? Ari, so much freedom of expression Twitter gave us. Just look at Elon Musk today and you know how much freedom you are allowed to have on Twitter. But during the farmer struggle, People's Archive of Rural India, which I represent and I'm the editor, started growing. We grew 2 times, 3 times, and then suddenly it stopped. Why? On the demand of the government of India, Google tweaked its algorithm and the number of searches for farmers' protests in India fell by 50 to 60%. Delhi police on the Divya Ravi case, you remember Disha Ravi case, arrested for toolkit, 18-year-old girl. Delhi police put out a tweet thanking Google and Twitter for helping it collect the information on the toolkit. All these different branches, all these different laws have come together. So, in conclusion, whether you're looking at gagging by law gagging by extra legal methods, corporate media and big money and inequality, or self censorship. We are in the position where we are marked number 159 in the World Press Freedom Index. One of the lowest positions possible and the lowest position for a country boasting itself a democracy. So, in this whole thing of gagging by governance, and one last little thing I'll leave you with personal experience. In 2020, India fell to 142 India fell to 142 in the World Press Freedom Index. Okay, when they did, Government of India got very angry. It formed a high-powered committee on the order of the Union Cabinet Secretary. Union Cabinet Secretary is the most important bureaucrat in the country. He takes his orders only from one man, or in the present regime, from one and a half men. I don't know which is the half, and I don't know which is the one. But yeah, so they formed a committee at the behest of the Union Cabinet Secretary. One and a half, the very high powered committee with 13 people. And some mischievous or well meaning bureaucrat told them, if you're having something to study this press freedom issue, maybe it's a good idea to call a couple of journalists as well. They also have something to do with press freedom. So I got called. The other gentleman who got called, you all know him, he's very famous. You can go and look up on the net because I want you to read about the case. He's an anchor of famous fame. You know that the rule is no anchor can keep quiet for more than 4 minutes. He kept dead silence for 4 hours. He never said a word. Then he pleaded inability to attend further meetings. I was the only one who spoke there. I gave a big dissent note at the end. Now, bureaucrats, Indian bureaucrats can be very sophisticated. They're very experienced. Whatever I said in the meeting, which was very harshly anti government, the, the chairman of the committee would say, oh, that's a very important point. It should be noted. I made about 30 points which he said are very important, should be noted. He knew he had done the dance before I had done the dance before. We both knew the steps. Not a word of what I said would appear in the final report. I wrote a note of dissent. Guess what happened? Only make in India. Only in India. The committee report disappeared. 3 days later, bombarding them, the committee disappeared. 2 days later, the email ID went invalid. But anyway, I want to tell you this. All the meetings I recorded from my end. So we have the evidence and proof of it. Think about which way we are going. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.